Hello everyone, welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name's Deshaun, and sorry it's been a while since I've recorded videos. As I've said, this Corona thing has made it a bit difficult because of my work schedule and how much I am working. But today I'm here to bring you another action classic. Fist of Legend. Now, Fist of Legend is the breakout movie for one Jet Li. Yes, that Jet Li. Before this movie, Jet Li was a star over in China and, in films, martial arts films. But this movie really broke him out. Now, Fist of Legends is actually is not only a great action movie, but it also does something that I haven't really seen done in a lot of movies, which is it addresses that, there's this kind of a stigma in America about racism. And racism is definitely present in America. It's obviously present in America. You don't have to look any further than just a history book to know that racism, even to this day, plays a big role in America. Plays a role, maybe not as big, nowhere near as big as a role. Obviously, it's definitely a lot less of a role than it used to be, but it was a big role. But what Fist of Legends actually acknowledges that racism is everywhere. And especially between the Japanese and the Chinese. The Japanese and Chinese have a long history of not liking each other. And it's something that's not really talked about in books very much, like unless you go looking for it. And, we won't bring it up in most of our history books. The Japanese and Chinese really don't like each other. The Chinese, and they've done bad, in particular, the Japanese and the Chinese have both done bad things to each other. And Fist of Legend takes place in the 1920s. They don't specify the exact date. At least I don't remember the exact date, but I know it takes place in the 1920s. And you follow Shen Shen, who is Jet Li's character, Shay Shen, who is this Chinese guy, this young man, because this is a young Jet Li. This is like a Jet Li at like 25, 24. This movie came out and around, I believe, 1990 something. I believe it came out, this movie came out a long time ago. Let me see. It had to have come out in 1990 something. This thing is saying 2000, but there's no way in hell Fist of Legends came out in 2000, man. I refuse. 1994, there we go. 1994. I was like, I know Fist of Legends came out a long time ago. 1994. This movie came out in 1994. This is a young Jet Li. This is like at minimum 30 years old, tops. He's somewhere in his mid to early 20s. This is a young Jet Li, and he's playing this Chinese student named Shen Shen, who goes over to Japan to study. He goes over to Japan to study, and of course there's this racial tension when he goes over there anyways, because obviously the Japanese are messing with him because he's Chinese. And then there's this whole thing going on between whose martial arts is better, the Japanese or the Chinese martial arts, and so on and so forth. But, so he's dealing with that while he's over there, and he falls in love with a Japanese girl, which is obviously another racial tension right there. Him this Chinese man falling in love with a Japanese girl. And it's funny, it's one of those things, honestly, this movie, you don't notice it until you see someone from Hong Kong right next to someone from Tokyo, but you really realize oh no, they are not some people oh, Chinese, Japanese, they all look the same to me. It's no, when you see them right next to each other, you realize no, they are not the same. They're are vaguely, no, they are not the same. You see them next to each other, you know a Japanese from a Chinese when you see them standing next to each other. So, but I just said that, because like I said, this movie really acknowledged some things that I wouldn't have even thought about, especially when I was a kid and saw this movie. This was my first introduction to Jet Li. And these themes, I was like, yeah, okay, I didn't know that there was a thing going on. But needless to say, something goes wrong over in China. His former teacher, his former teacher who taught him and made him a badass in his own right, is killed by these assholes who are because at this time, I believe there was a Japanese occupation of China or some shit like that. Like the Japanese occupied China or some shit like that. Some crazy thing like that happened. Now I don't want to say that for sure because I'm going off the top of my head. I'm going off the top of my head. But yeah, something like that had happened and things got rough. Something happened to his teacher. His teacher ended up being murdered. Now, his teacher was murdered, and it was made to look like it wasn't a murder. Made it look like, oh, he just lost a fight. But really, he was murdered by this asshole dude because like I said, they're occupying this area of China right now. And needless to say, the guy who was occupying this area of China, like, granted, it gets a little cheesy in this bit, happens to be a martial artist, happens to be someone who really values Japanese martial arts and Japanese supremacy over the Chinese ways of thinking, and the Japanese have this evolved way of thinking, and they're thinking, and it was this whole thing going on. So he packs his stuff and goes back to Japan to get revenge, to find out what happened to his teacher, find out who's responsible, and get vengeance on them. And that is Fist of Legends. Fist of Legends is some of Jet Li's best work. It really is. That has so many amazing action sequences. The one man army action sequence was amazing. And honestly, it was like I said, it was my introduction to Jet Li. It was my introduction to basically every character Jet Li plays, which are either he plays these short guys who are like underdogs, either he plays the underdog, or he plays this vicious, or he plays this just powerful, this small man who is swift, fast, and powerful and ferocious, and you just don't, and like he could just introduce it to his leg snapping and his arm plucking, and just he is a bad dude. And like I said, this movie did so much to put over Jet Li's character, to put so much to put over what he's about. The martial arts scenes in this movie are fantastic. The action sequences in this movie are, like I said, are fantastic. The story of this young man who's kind of like who's like driven by this anger and this vengeance, and then this young girl who comes over with him, who's in love with him from Japan, who comes over with him, and she just wants him to let this go and move on with his life. Everyone's kind of telling him to let this go because it's like what happened. But obviously, like I said, the more the story goes, the more it's sort of revealed that this is a little like that. There's more going on here than meets the eye. There's there's all this tension with with this old schoolmate. There's even tension with his old schoolmates because he left to go to Japan for further education. But it's played up very much like any other, like a movie, like one of those movies where someone leaves the projects to go get an education, then comes back and they go, oh, you're not one of us anymore. That's kind of how they treated him. It was like, oh, you just left to go get an education. You left to go those jabs. And he kind of made his own style. He took the style that his teacher gave him and then twisted it. And needless to say, his style worked better. It did. It was just a better style. It worked better. And then there became this whole tension between the other students because the younger students wanted to learn his style instead of the guy who's the new master style, instead of learning his style. And then there was this tension between them, and then there's obviously the mystery of who killed their master. There's so much going on in this, and like I said, there's more to this than an action movie. And I feel like when people go back and look at this movie, they might just see an action movie, but to me, Fist of Legends is a classic. It's a classic to me. I feel like anyone who's into martial arts, anyone who's into martial arts films, if you haven't seen Fist of Legends, you really are doing yourself a disservice. I throw it in here because I've kind of been doing the spectrum. I did like Lethal Weapon. I did like Equilibrium. I've been doing the Desperado. So now I am at martial arts movies, and I just wanted this to be the first one I talked about because this was the first movie. This was the first movie that I remember seeing Jet Li in, and I remember him leaving a massive impression on me. I remember looking at this movie and being like, this dude kicks all the ass in the world, and he did kick all the ass in the world. Barely taking a scratch. He's this short little Chinese dude, but he is just fierce and just tearing people up. I was just like, yeah, man. And like I said, Jet Li just has this look on his face that he just wants to beat your ass. Like you just know, he looks at you like that, you're like, oh shit. Like I say, the one-man army scene. If you do nothing, just YouTube the one-man army scene from Fist of Legends. It is amazing. It is some of the best work ever. He's just fucking people up, man. He is just fucking people up. Thank you guys for joining the Comic Game Movie Show. Please remember to like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.